Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's race C is Bathurst in Group 3, and it's the very first time we get to test out the Group 3s with the new physics. Some things never change though, as the meta and the anti-meta cars are both really familiar. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car of the week is the Lexus Rseat Eff. The Supra and the Corvette are both pretty much untouchable, even against each other. They are a very good match, but the M6 and the Rseat Eff are close when it comes to the third and fourth fastest. I think the M6 might actually be faster than the Rseat Eff, so that's actually why I chose the Rseat Eff. It's not quite good enough to be considered meta, or even the second in line for the meta, but it is so powerful and nimble that it's pretty much better than everything else available. Taking a look at the leaderboard, you'll see that the Rseat Eff is actually in the top 10, and there are a lot of it in the top 100, but when it comes to the actual race pace, the Corvette and the Supra are just way too good. I put it in 33rd place with a 2-flap 0.6, and obviously you can see from the top 10 that you can do much better with this car, and I think that there's a lot of time to be found with all of the cars, especially with how new the physics are right now. As soon as the lap starts, look for the 100 meter board on the right, and about a car length before this light post right afterwards, you're going to hit the brakes. Getting down to second gear, we're going to turn in after the 50 meter board, trying to get as close to this curb without going up on top of it as we can. Get on the throttle and of course try to avoid the grass. The new physics are going to really punish you if you hit that grass. With the latest iteration of the physics, it's a lot easier to understeer on braking, oversteer on braking, and oversteer on corner exit. So you've got to be very gentle and very smooth. Emphasis on smooth. Also take note at how much I'm revving out the car before shifting. You can actually rev this thing pretty far before you need to shift it. After the 100 meter board is this access road, and right before the grass starts afterwards, that's when you're going to hit the brakes. It's important to scrub off enough speed before you turn in, so look at this access road on the right before you turn in. We want to make sure that we hit the apex about the middle of the corner, and you got to get yourself really close to the curb without touching it. You'll notice that the road kind of caves in just a little bit right by the curb, and you want to use that camber to make sure that you can get on the throttle and stay close to the inside so you don't understeer and go over that bump into the wall. Looking for this hole in the barrier, I start turning in right before that, getting as close to this as I can before I start lifting off the throttle right at that bend. As soon as I apex, I add brakes, but I make sure that I don't go to 100% brake at all during this corner. We're going to look for this crack on the ground right here, and if you go over just the very end of it, you should be on the right line. As the middle of my car passes over it, I like to downshift to first gear, and then I know that I want to come off the brakes entirely right as I get all the way past it. Getting to first gear, then back up to second gear, being very gentle. You can really easily oversteer here. You've got to make sure that you're not steering too much and you're not on the throttle too much to make sure that you do not slide out at all. Take note of how long it takes me to get to full throttle in second gear, and also take note that I'm really gently steering towards the middle of the track, but not all the way to the left. We want to make sure we keep up our momentum and don't sacrifice too much time moving to the left before we steer gently to the right to pass this corner, and you'll also notice that I'm lifting off the throttle just gently in third gear. Once you're past the apex, you should be able to go full throttle and align yourself all the way up with this wall as close as you can, and when you get to this tree, that's when you start turning in. A gentle lift as you shift up to fourth gear should be enough, and you should be able to get fully back on that throttle as you apex directly underneath that Fujitsu sign. Once you clear the red wall without hitting it, your instincts are going to tell you to move all the way to the right side of the track, and it's okay if you do right about here, but you need to start moving back towards the middle of the track before this change of the color of the wall. I stay close to the center of the track and aim for this tree in the distance right here, making sure that I don't ever straighten out the wheel. As the track dips right here, right at the lowest part, I start lifting the throttle in conjunction with steering to make sure that I can get all the way up next to this curb, but if you hit this curb early, it's going to be a disaster. Make sure you hit it late. Momentum, of course, is very important, but don't be afraid to lift off the throttle a little bit. Approaching this corner right here, we're going to avoid hitting this curb. You want to lift off before the crest, and then you can get back on that throttle in fifth gear, trying to get as close to the inside as you possibly can. Staying full throttle, try to align yourself with the shape of the wall that goes beyond the white line right here, and then as you turn in, before you get to the Audi R8 sign, you're going to lift off the throttle and start gently adding the brakes as you go underneath that sign. Gently braking as we get close to this right-hand wall. We want to continue steering to the right as we get past it, and I want you to take note that as I steer, I lessen the brakes, and the less I steer, the more brakes I add. Down to fourth as we transition to the left-hander, and notice that I'm coming off the brakes a little bit as I'm turning in. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to downshift to third gear, add more brakes, and then trail brake in as we hug the right. When I've slowed down enough to stay as close to this right-hand wall as I can, I come off the brakes entirely and let the car coast. What I'm looking for is the end of the curb here on the right. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of brake, enough to shift the weight to the front so I can change directions really close, hit the dipper right there, and then get back on that throttle gently, of course, but you need to use as much full throttle as you can to keep up your momentum and get a lot of speed going down for this section. Get close to the wall on the left past that one corner, and then as we switch directions, you're going to turn in and then come off the throttle to get as close to the right-hand side as you possibly can. Gentle brakes right here are going to allow you to stay to the right before you start turning in. Looking right here, you can see that the wall diverges from the white line, and before that, you need to switch directions and start turning into the left-hand corner. Get to first gear right as that wall turns blue, and you're going to look for this high part of the wall right here. At the end of it, you want to be in second gear and gently squeezing on that throttle. Again, take note of how long it takes me to get to full throttle, and also take note of how little I'm steering by the time I do get on full throttle. You want to be on full throttle as early as you possibly can, and of course you do not want to hit that exit wall. Again, with this long straight, I want you to pay attention to when I shift. It's not going to make a massive difference, but making sure that you rev the car out properly should allow you to get the most amount of speed that you possibly can, which of course is very important for these straights. Using the extra track on the left, we want to angle ourselves and get a line to the right as soon as we possibly can. Looking for the 150 meter board on the right. On the wall it says sign event. You're going to hit the brakes right in the middle of that word. Continue downshifting all the way to second gear, and right at the 50 meter board you're going to start turning in and trail braking in second gear. Back up to third gear as you go over the curb, but be very gentle. You can get a lot of oversteer here. If you do, correct it as soon as you can and make sure you're not touching any of the curbs while oversteering, because it's probably going to be unrecoverable. The grass on the left is also like a vacuum. If you go all the way on the grass, you're probably going to go all the way into that wall. For the final braking zone, look to the red and white stripes on the left. We're going to hit the brakes at the middle red stripe. Be very patient braking in a straight line, and right before the second to last light post on the right, we're going to start turning in. You want to avoid going over this inside curb because it's going to upset the car, but when you get past it, get on that throttle gently in second gear, and of course, no oversteer. If you oversteer while hitting that curb, it's going to make you slide out. It's going to ruin your whole lap. From there, it's a straight shot to the finish. As we go over this lap, I want you to pay attention to the braking especially. Braking and throttle, of course, but the braking especially. I talk frequently in these guides about the magic ABS that Gran Turismo has, and that is actually, I wouldn't say it's gone, but it has much less of an effect. You have to really learn how to trail brake to make sure that you're not just understeering into every single corner now. I think it's going to be more important to be more precise, and it's going to be very important to really determine what the weight of the car is doing at any given time. It's really easy to slide out on throttle, and it is surprisingly easy to slide out on braking, even with the more stable FR cars. For a lot of these corners, if you look back at any of my guides, I think you're going to find that I go full brake into a lot of these corners, whereas now I'm going full brake only into the heaviest of the braking zones. Another general thing to think about, especially on this top part of the mountain, is that you should not be afraid to let off the throttle if you feel like you need to. Of course, it's going to be better to not lose any speed, but it's going to be infinitely better to lose some speed rather than hit a wall, because this week we have incredible penalties just from grazing these walls. So do whatever you can to avoid the walls, even if it means losing some momentum. It's going to be a lot more beneficial than serving a penalty. In a lot of the downhill braking zones, you're going to notice that I don't use full brake at all. In fact, I don't think I went full brake one time from the start of going up the mountain to that corner right there. I think the only time I'm going to go full brake now is in this next braking zone and in the final corner. The aero effect also seems to not be quite as strong unless you're going really fast, which means that you can get throttle oversteer even in like third and fourth gear corners, even with FR cars. That's not something you really had to worry about with the last iteration of the physics, but you've got to be careful pretty much at all times now. So you're going to be very much rewarded if you are just more of a careful driver and a very smooth driver. And since we're here at this final corner, I do think you should completely avoid that inside curve. I used to actually try to monster truck over it, but it really does upset the balance of the car, and that's much worse now with these physics. So this race was actually the last race of my extra long stream yesterday, and I did record it, but my recording got corrupted, and I don't know how. So I'll have to look into that, but luckily I did save the replay, so I was able to record this from the replay. There are two implications I want you to pay attention to, though. That means we do not get any of the delta, none of the time information, so you're not going to be able to see how close people are in front of me or how far away they are, and I won't be able to talk about how far the leader is ahead. None of those things really matter because you're going to be able to determine just by looking at it if we're in slipstream range, at least most of the time. But the other really important thing is the inputs. The throttle and braking inputs aren't going to be as precise as if you got to watch me doing it live. It's not exactly super far off and it's not every corner, but for whatever reason, when you're watching a replay, the braking timing isn't as precise as it should be. So sometimes I'm going to actually be braking a little bit earlier than it shows on the screen, but I don't think it's ever going to be enough that it will ruin your lap, like if you try to copy what I'm doing. Most of it is an approximation anyways, because you're going to be going a different speed than I am and various other things, but I just wanted to mention that it will be slightly different than what it was live, but we're talking about like a 1% difference. Now, strategy-wise, this might appear to be one of those races that just has a rallycross style Joker lap kind of pit requirement. You don't have to take tires, but the tire wear is high enough that it does make sense to take tires, and every single race that I've done this week, I have taken tires. I do suggest it. If you want to do the strategy where you just pit really early or really late and you don't take tires, that's totally fine, but I do think that it's going to be much slower than if you did take tires. As I've talked about in the past, that doesn't mean that you don't have options. We don't want to look at just a specific lap to pit. We still want to have options just in case there are slower drivers in front of you or faster drivers behind you, and you want to be able to do whatever you can to avoid pitting with other people. Since it's a 10-lap race, it makes it pretty easy to flip any of these strategies. So if you're starting from the back, you might want to pit on lap 3. You can do the exact same strategy by starting from the front and pitting lap 7, if that makes sense. The inverse also works depending on the traffic ahead, so really anywhere between lap 3 and lap 7 is a good pit window. You can push it beyond that, but I do think it's important to get the most out of the tires if you are switching tires, so if you do want to switch tires, I would wait until at least lap 3, otherwise you pretty much would be better off just not even switching tires if you're going to pit before that. You may recognize the man in front of us as Outlaw Quadrant. You can see his screen name is Outlaw Twitch because he does stream on Twitch. He is a good friend of mine, and he is one of the few people that has the distinction of being a GT Academy finalist as well as a Gran Turismo World Tour driver, just like me. There weren't exactly a lot of opportunities to try to pass, but you may have noticed that I was giving him a lot of space while trying to stay as close to his bumper as I can. I wasn't trying to pressure him, and I wasn't trying to make any moves. The same goes for here, because it's really important to work with people who you know are also quick, and that way you're not just wasting time. When it came to this, I just got really lucky that I didn't also run into him, because the person in the WRX seems to have braked a little bit too early. But when it came to here, I thought that he was going to be slowed down and pushed in the wall. I actually felt bad about this because it made him check up, and he actually lost another position because of that. At the end of the day, it was just a weird racing situation, but if I had to do it all over again, I would have probably just chosen to bump draft him up the straight, and then we could have both attacked this WRX later on. So again, sorry Outlaw if you're watching, I should not have tried to pass you there because it forced you to lose multiple positions, and I feel bad about that. Another really interesting thing about the new physics, and it's actually probably my favorite thing, is that the dirty air doesn't seem nearly as severe. You can stay really close to these cars really easily. Now, people in the last physics iteration were still able to do the same thing, but those people were just very, very good at managing the dirty air and maintaining their pace. I was never that good. I couldn't stay this close to the Group 3 cars when following at this kind of speed, but now it's actually really easy because the dirty air, the aero wash, isn't nearly as bad. It's important to note that the WRX also had slipstream from the GTR ahead, and despite the fact that he also had slipstream, the Lexus was able to get all the way in front of him before the braking zone, so that right there is one of the reasons that we chose the Lexus. If this were the kind of race where I was going to go in the pits and not take tires, right now would be a perfect opportunity to do so, because it's pretty clear that I'm much faster than this GTR driver. And in fact, I shouldn't have gone for this move either, but I wanted to take a chance. The reason I wouldn't go for a pass right here on the front straight is because I'm then going to be in front of a car that's going to be able to use my slipstream up on this really long straight that's also a steep uphill section. So essentially, I'm going to have everything going against me, and he, as long as he gets a good exit, is going to have everything going for him. I got really lucky that he didn't get a good exit though, so I had clean air and I didn't have to worry about him trying to pass me here. Because of that beautiful clean air, it wasn't until the end of the very next lap that I encountered any traffic whatsoever. And the traffic I did encounter was our buddy Voidsy, who's also a very fast driver. The guy in front of him that happened to slow him down decided not to pit, so it looked like I had a really good shot to just pit with Voidsy. But luckily I avoided him. That's such a bad joke, I'm so sorry. I told myself I wouldn't do that, but I did it. And you know what? I could record all this, re-record all of it, but I'm not going to. That's what I get for laughing as Voidsy hit that wall. Voidsy, I'm so sorry, but I've made a really terrible joke and now people are going to have to cringe with us. Anyways, when you go in the pits, make sure you don't accidentally take fuel. Definitely do take tires if you were planning on it. It's easy just to skip over all of that, but the most important thing is as you're exiting the pits, do not steer whatsoever and be gentle on the throttle. I have actually spun directly into the grass and hit that wall, ruining my race multiple times this week. So be very careful exiting the pits. Thanks to the very good timing of the pits, I was able to avoid any kind of traffic until lap 6. I wanted to include all of this because it's really important to know that because of the new physics, a lot of people are going to be struggling. People who generally do know what they're doing are probably going to end up struggling, and also people are going to be choosing weird cars. Rez in the yellow Pennzoil GTR, I think, actually braked a little bit early, and then Blue Turd Taurus, which is a hilarious name, by the way, ended up going off and almost hitting that wall, which gave us the space to get in front of him, but then Rez was still in front, which meant that both Loaf and I were going to have to deal with a most likely much slower car, especially in this downhill section. When you're following a slower car, it's really important to note that if you do have to slow down a lot more than you're used to, when you get on the throttle is going to be a lot more sensitive and you'll be much more likely to spin out. So be very careful of paying attention to how much speed you're carrying through corners. Now, I got really lucky that it is Loaf. Loaf is someone that I've been racing for a long time, and I do trust them very much, so I went for that outside pass, and because of Loaf's trustworthiness, I was able to actually solidify that pass. Now, I think I would have had it anyways because I had the slipstream from the very fast Pennzoil, but I also got this nice bump from the Supra, which really solidified everything, and I was able to get all the way in front of Rez before the next braking zone. I've talked about this in the past, but it's kind of funny how if you have a good reputation, you can end up losing positions more easily because people will go for crazy moves knowing that you're going to give them space. And also, if you have a lot of friends, people will choose to bump you rather than another person because they think that you have a better chance of helping them get in front. So I really benefited from everything in that situation. I pulled off the outside move because I do trust Loaf, and then Blue Turd Taurus decided to give me the bump instead of Loaf, which was probably just the best strategic-wise because of how much more speed I had. But either way, I really benefited, and I am now in 4th place, having already pit, and I'm pretty sure P. Andrew, who's directly in front, had not pit yet. Jumping to the top of the hill, I'm remembering, yes, P. Andrew did not pit yet, and luckily he also remembered that. He just completely gave me that. That was a very classy move from P. Andrew, but also it's going to help him in the end too, because if he struggles a lot and he has to battle me, especially through a really tricky place, he could potentially crash or just lose a lot of time, and since he already hasn't pit, he's going to come out of the pits way behind anyways. So it was just a good strategy call from him, and of course, I appreciated it very much. Sticking close to Catalan, who had the exact same car as I did, you know that you're going to be able to get all the way in front of someone who has the same car as long as you're close enough and you get a good exit leading to this part of the track. So obviously he went to the inside, which turned into the outside for that kink, but then it's the inside again, and it looked like he did want to defend a little bit, but I braked much later and I was able to pull off just a clean pass right there. Thanks to Catalan for being clean. We actually had a few collisions in the past couple races that we did, but it seemed really obvious that he wasn't doing it on purpose, and that's totally fine. That's the kind of stuff that happens. And so we actually exchanged pleasantries after the race, and despite the fact that we had been in multiple collisions before, we remained friends, and that's how I think it should be. Jumping ahead one final time, at the very end, Baldini was way too far ahead for me to even consider catching him. I tried to get the fastest lap, and I got a pretty good one, a 2:01.8. This car can definitely do a low to a mid 2:01. It could probably actually hit a sub 2:01 in the right hands, but I couldn't quite pull it off today. We got really lucky with the strategy call and just the traffic in general, but we also had to pull off some real passes, which really did show off how good the Lexus is. I don't think we got a chance to pull off a pass on a Supra or a Corvette, but rest assured, this can definitely pass either one of those cars given the right circumstances. And even if you can't, then you can just use a better strategy and hopefully still be able to come out ahead. As always, thank you very much for watching my videos. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I do want to apologize for not making a video last week. It was a little bit too much with the new physics, as well as coming back from California visiting the real-life Grand Valley. I'll be making a video about that very soon. This weekend, I'm going to be at the World of Racing in the LA area with Samantha Tan Racing. Come stop by if you can. Look for my Instagram and any of the Samantha Tan Racing socials for any more information that you might need. And I'm going to leave you with a look at my current members. Thank you all very much. Sorry I haven't been around as much, but things are getting a little bit less hectic after this weekend, so things should get back to normal. Thank you.